I'm Chip Bach, and welcome to Blue Rock. On each episode, we'll discuss what life is like on this big blue rock, where we are all headed, separately and together, what changes we need to make to ourselves, the planet, and towards each other, and just discuss what daily life is like for your fellow crew. And maybe, just maybe, we may also see a commonality that connects all of us. All right, welcome to another episode of Blue Rock. I'm Chip Bach, your host, and I've got a tremendous guest here with me today. His name is Chuck Patterson. Chuck, we're going to give you I don't know if you can hear that on your end, but the studio is very excited that you're here. And I know Chuck loves it. A lot of people will say they don't like the cheering. I know Chuck likes the cheering. Right? He likes to have a good time. So we're gonna get the studio to calm down. Everybody, I know people are very excited. The ladies, everybody's very excited when Chuck Patterson is on. So everybody get in your seats. Hold on, Chuck. They're gonna calm down here in a second. So I like to give you the full virtual immersion, Chuck. So all right, cool.
I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. That's amazing, right there.
You didn't know there's a whole studio back there, man. That's the stuff I don't let you in. There's about 40, 50 people back there.
So good.
Anyway, well, listen. Thanks for getting on, Chuck. Obviously, times have been a little strange for all of us. Here on the Blue Rock podcast, we're trying to get people a little better connected. And you of all people, I'm gonna give people some background for those who don't know who Chuck Patterson is, and whether you listen to the podcast or whether you're watching the YouTube channel. To call Chuck a waterman would be a vast understatement. As many of you know, I'm pretty deep into the water sports. We've talked with other, watermen from around the world. We've got other, obviously there's a lot of those people coming into the podcast. But Chuck is one who excels, not just one, he kind of does it all. He's a master of multiple disciplines: skiing, snowboarding, big wave surfing, stand-up paddleboarding, kiteboarding, windsurfing, foil surfing, and speed flying. We're going to get into what the heck that is. Chuck has been charging mountains and chasing waves as a full-time sponsored athlete and stuntman for over 30 years. It's a long ass time, and he's still in one piece. We're going to talk about that too. California Adventure Sports Journal said this about Chuck: if such a thing as a California Action Sports Hall of Fame existed, Chuck Patterson would win unanimous induction on the first ballot. That kind of says it all, man. We're going to talk about how you feel about that. So, and lastly, some people might also know him as the Shark Whisperer. We're going to talk about that too. So, Chuck, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. Super honored to, break bread with you and talk story. I mean, the nice thing is, we've been doing sports for so long. I've known you for a very long time, and it's nice to kind of, after all this stuff that's been going on, to get back and just get some good story time in.
Yeah, man. I think the first time we met in person, even though I knew of you prior to 2009, I want to say it was the 2009 Hobie Hennessy U.S. Paddleboard Championships in Redondo.
Oh, yeah.
Where right. I came out, borrowed an unlimited board from Joe Bark, who we both know, and you just, I don't know, gun went off, and I think I gave you a hug at the finish line. That was about all I saw you in the course of that race. That was when you were on that Hobie Unlimited sub. For those of you who don't know, and again, we've got a broad audience, so I don't want to. I try and, Chuck, please bear with me. I do try and expand when we start geeking out on stand-up paddleboards and unlimited and what the heck that means. An unlimited stand-up paddleboard. Everybody's very familiar with what stand-up paddleboard is, but in racing, an unlimited board usually is about 18 feet plus. I think the rules are technically 16 feet plus, but in general, they're 18 foot plus boards. Chuck was one of the original dudes out there just crushing it on an 18-foot custom Hobie carbon board. And like I said, in that race in 2009, man, I remember that gun going off, and all I saw was this pair of red shorts way the hell out in front of everybody. And then, like I said, saw you at the end of the race. So yeah, that was the first time. And obviously, you and I've raced with people that are somewhat legends that were
Oh
all
yeah.
kind of just everyday dudes back then, from Thomas Maximus, Rob Rojas, Danny Ching. Was he on a surf ski back then?
He was no, I think. You know what? Good question. He might have been. I know that he was so heavy on, or I mean, like as always, without rigor. But I
Right.
remember he kind of came on a little bit later and then just crushed us.
Yeah, I know. He was one of those. He was one of those guys that we all hated, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, on a side note with that, Chuck and I, Thomas Maximus, Rob Rojas, Chuck and I have all considered ourselves. I'm going to use a more PC term: the bigger kids in
Yes.
stand-up paddleboarding. What that means for those of you who don't know, 190 plus, right? In 6 foot plus in height. And in stand-up paddleboarding back in the day, not as big a deal, right? You could get
Yeah.
out there, everybody kind of the designs of the boards. As things progressed, the little flyweights showed up, and that was it, man. It's become progressively harder and harder to compete. But back then, things were a little bit more even Steven,
Yeah. I
so to
mean,
speak.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
No, I mean it was definitely a really cool time in the sport. I mean because there was so much evolution, so much stuff evolving, and design was kind of just all over the place. So it made it really cool. There wasn't any right or wrong way. It was just dependent on the pretty much the paddler and the conditions. And then once things kind of started rolling, and we were using the unlimited boards a bunch, then people started trying to manage the sport a little bit and suddenly go, okay, we need 12.6, we need this. And then suddenly that changed the game to where big guys, actually kind of had to go backwards. And suddenly we're competing against, then it really turned into the weight class didn't match up. So, you got guys that are, basically maybe 130 to 150 pounds on a 12.6, and then you got someone like me or you that's like 220 trying to grind it out, and these guys just smoke past you. And then we kind of weathered some storms through that, and then we finally got the 14 foot class. And I remember I was still going back and forth with the unlimited because I was like so anti 12.6. And then I go, all right, I'm going to give it a shot with the 14. And suddenly I found myself very competitive in even the unlimited class, because that just a little, 2 feet more and definitely a lot more volume made a huge difference. And at least it slowly equaled the playing field, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, look, back then, that unlimited class, I remember racing against you in the first Cold Stroke. I don't know whether you remember
Oh,
that.
yeah.
You came and talked.
Yeah,
That was in Wrightsville Beach,
that was cold.
some winter month, whatever the hell it was, January, February, some reason to not be in Wrightsville Beach
Yeah.
at that time of the year. I remember it being just absolutely freezing. You did a presentation, I think, night before the race. I borrowed a production version of the carbon board that I think you'd helped design
Yeah.
in the 12.6, thinking, oh, I'm going to come up, I'm going to give Chuck. Yeah, same thing that happened in 2009. I ended up following Chuck around the course, just colder. That's pretty much the only difference between Redondo and then. So, but by the way, if anybody's sensing a trend, that happened the whole time. So we'll have more stories that we're going to keep talking about, but it's always me looking at Chuck's ass. So anyway, long story short, I do remember that was a cold that was a ridiculous. We were doing stupid stuff back then, meaning
Yeah.
but I got to tell you, it was, I don't know whether you and I'll, please talk about this. That was some of the most fun, man. I mean, because around that same time was when the Rainbow Sandals Battle of the Paddle first started.
Yeah.
And you were the inaugural winner of that and crushed it. And that changed everything, because now you had surfing involved. So talk more about that.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. I think that's when stand-up paddling really, in my mind, became kind of serious and very organized. And to have Jerry Lopez and Sparky from, Rainbow Sandals really kind of put a ton of money and effort into creating what I would deem as like a world championship, because it was pretty much the best paddlers from all over the world came to it, whether you want to label it a world championship or not, but it really was. Out of any event that I saw, there was like heavy hitters from everywhere, and it was such a cool event. That first one was kind of, none of us knew what to expect, but then we were forced, they were like, okay, we need to manage it and have it be one class, so it makes it simple. And the whole 12-6 thing was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I was working really hard with Hobie, trying to get as much volume in a 12-6 that was still fast, but yet stable, for me to, do my work. And I just remember like a good 3-4 weeks before the event, everybody was training and everybody was really secretive on the stuff they were on. And I remember,
Yeah.
living in Dana Point, I was in the water. I was building a friend's house, and I was in the water early morning and in the evening because I was all about, getting the glassy workout. And then I knew in the afternoons it's going to be ugly, and you just don't know what Mother Nature's going to hit you with. And so
Yeah.
I just overdid it, so to speak, and just kept going. I just remember seeing people, I'd see them like in the harbor, and I'm just cranking out my miles, and I'd suddenly see a group of, paddlers that I knew were racing, and suddenly they turn around because they were on boards that they didn't want me to see. And I was kind of laughing. I'm like, oh my God. So it kind of like, I'm all, okay, so that's how it's going to be. And I just remember that, all right, I'm just going to do my workouts, not talk to anybody, do my thing. And my biggest dream was like, how rad would it be to win in my hometown? And that would really kind of show that all
Yeah.
the hard work I put into it really came to something. And the day of the event, I remember they had I think it was the open event, which had, I don't know, a good couple hundred people. And
Yeah.
it started out all glassy, and they were doing, I think it was like maybe it was like a 3 mile loop or something like that, or 2 mile loop. And they were doing like, I think 3 or 4 laps, and it started out glassy, and I kind of was like, oh man, it would be so nice if it got windy. And then in the last lap of the race, it suddenly ramped up to like blowing 20 plus, and
Yeah.
I could just see everybody, because the pro class hasn't started. We're just watching, and I could see everybody just freaking out, and I'm just like going, this could be it, man. This could be
That's when
what
the
I
big guys
wanted,
start to smile, man.
Yeah,
When the
yeah.
wind picks up and the surf gets up, you're like, you
That's
little
right.
guys can't handle this 12-6, can you, in big surf? We can.
Yeah,
Because it's like a little,
exactly.
it's like a shortboard to us. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I used to do the same thing. People would be freaking out. I'm like, are you kidding me? The playing field just leveled dramatically
Yeah.
because your little flyweight is now going to work against you. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so that was really awesome. And then I remember when we started, you know how every race is. This was like the first biggest event, that we've had in the sport. And,
Yeah,
you get everybody lined up on the beach. You're trying to get your angle. The buoy is like a half mile out, and it really depends where stand, to do your takeoff, and then whoever's next to you, and then you gotta, take in consideration the wind and how much it's blowing downwind, and so you don't want to be, you're just trying to get the quickest, fastest
yeah,
line, the straight line to get there, and then do your move. So I just remember it was just so much like stress and anxiety. And then when the horn blew, I just, you just, all that stuff disappears and you take off. And I
yeah.
grinded it out. And as luck would have it, I made it to that first round of buoy. And then I just remember it was just hell to just keep that lead all the way around. And I remember we had to, after every lap, we had to get out and run this chicane, which was,
Yeah.
I think, a cool mix, and then come back, jump back on your board, and then do another lap. And
Did
so
you guys have board caddies that first event? That inaugural
we didn't
event?
have our own. They had people that were there, so there was no kind of like plan, So it
Right,
was just like we were just told, like, hey, you just leave your board there. Someone's gonna have it on the other end, ready for you to jump on. And so we were
yeah,
like, okay.
yeah,
So I just remember just, there was definitely a lot more waves coming in. So I remember you'd round that outside buoy, and then you'd kind of try to surf a wave in and try not to break your fin off in the shore pound. And then you'd run the chicane and come back, and hopefully your board was in the right spot. You'd grab it,
right.
go, pretty much side wind a little bit, and then suddenly crank upwind, and then do this big square again. And I remember, I think we had, yeah, 2 laps, and on the third lap, I was pretty destroyed, and I had this one Hawaiian, gosh darn it, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. The guy's amazing. Anyways, an outrigger canoe paddler from Kauai,
Yeah.
and or from Big Island, Kona. Yeah, and
Yeah.
T Bear, that's who it was. This
Oh
guy
yeah, yeah,
was
yeah.
a badass, insane paddler. Anyway, so he was pretty much on my butt the whole time, and I was pretty exhausted. And we're going upwind, and he's right behind me. Then we go sidewind. Um, he ends up falling. I get a little head. I end up falling. He's right next to me. Suddenly we round the mark going downwind, and we're right next to each other. And I'm at a point going, you know what? Just let him have it. And then I'm in my mind like, well, what are you talking about? Let him have it, you know? And so we're grinding it out. He's not giving me an inch, and we're just side by side going downwind, getting these glides. And luck would have it, some little bobble or whatever, he ended up kind of slipping and falling, got right back on his board, but I just never looked back, and I put the hammer down and came around the corner and back upwind and didn't even look, didn't want to care or anything, and then made it through the finish line. And best day ever, but the rad part was just I ended up running back to the beach and ran, the chicane with him, because it was such an honor to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
hammered against by such an incredible athlete that I didn't even know until I got to know him better, and it was amazing.
You guys that day, for those of us in the paddleboard community around the world, changed how everybody saw stand-up paddleboarding. I remember watching that, seeing the replays and some of the videos and stuff, because there wasn't live streaming then or anything like that, and being on the right coast and hearing about this event, and then seeing the recap afterwards, and just changed everything. People were like, "This is so cool!" And so then, of course, the core group of right coasters, we were all like, "Are they doing it again next year?" Because we're there.
Yeah.
And I think I ended up doing 2010, 11. I think I missed 12. I was there for the last time they did it at Dana Point. I know that. I don't remember which year that was. But I did it like 3-4 years total before it disbanded.
Yeah.
I think I stopped going when they moved it around the corner, and that there was that 1 or 2 crazy events.
Oh yeah, we had that where it went to Salt Creek. They're kind of changing,
Yeah.
and then we had massive surf, which was incredible, but
Yeah.
it changed the whole dynamic of that
It's a different
event.
vibe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't the
So,
same.
I mean, you guys had a great event, that inaugural event, but man, it picked up so much steam
Yeah,
those 3 or 4 years afterwards. For you guys, you were kind of there, started it all. It was your local space. For us coming in from around the world or coming over from the right coast, Dana Point was the cool, like that whole vibe. I can remember I would come in like 3 or 4 days before the event, and Jerry Lopez. I mean, for anybody who knows anything about surfing, surf culture, surf legends, to have people like Mickey Munoz just walking by, hanging out, they'll stop and talk to you, just chat. They don't know who you are, but you know who the hell they are. Jerry Lopez is doing yoga every morning before the event with people on the grass. And it was like a giant family. It was like the global tribe that had gotten into this crazy sport of stand-up paddleboarding. This was like our homecoming every year, right? Yeah. Everybody would come together and people would be hanging out. I remember E.J. Johnson and Bob Reisner. Unfortunately, we lost Bob a few years back, but I don't remember. They used to do that. It was like a beer can rally.
Oh yeah.
Like
Rob Rojas and those guys.
Or a couple days before that, or something like that, where they do this beer. I mean, dude,
it was in the harbor. Yeah, it was
so much fun in the harbor. I mean, just everybody was there hanging out.
Yeah. I
remember hanging out at the Hobie store. They would do an event and a big barbecue and pulled pork and all this stuff, and it was just. I can't, for, like I said, for those of us around the world, that became our like Mecca, right? Like that was the place to go. And the best part was that you could come in, and even though you might be a pro elite class on the right coast, but you're not sponsored, right? You're paying your own way, whatever. But you'd get to come and now race with people that are fully sponsored, coming in from all over the world. And for me, I know you guys had a lot of that first race, But by the time I got there, the next
Oh
year,
yeah, no, it
100
was.
and what 175 on the starting line for the men's class,
Yeah, it was, yeah,
something like that.
175, something like that. And then I
And
remember
the
the open
Tahitian,
class was like close to like
oh,
400,
yeah, it was like
500. Yeah,
500, something like
yeah,
that. Yeah. But I remember that for me personally, it's, I still, I mean, I'm not kidding. When I envision it, I can hear the drums and I get the goosebumps.
yeah,
175 on the line. We're all standing there, and the commentator would go, "Paddlers, are you ready?" And everybody
yeah,
go, "Ooh, ooh, ooh,"
yeah,
right? Like the Spartans, and the Tahitian drums start, and
yeah,
the crowd, there'd be 3,000-4,000 people on the beach. Dude, insane. It didn't matter where you placed.
yeah,
Just competing and being in the event the energy was off the chart, right? And then some of those years, just where the surf would be a little bit more crazy or whatever, and so many people, the carnage. I used to have people grab me on the beach and just be like, I don't know what this is that I just watched, but this is the most fun sporting event I've ever seen.
hmm,
It was like NASCAR and surfing
yeah,
all meshed together in a gladiator arena where just anything can happen. People losing their boards, going up against Thor's hammer on the rocks, and just, oh my God, just awesome. What was that? I mean, obviously you were there
I
the
mean,
first
that
year,
was,
but as it got bigger, what was that like for you?
it was pretty rad. I mean, it was definitely to move it up there where the surf was more in contention. And for some crazy reason, I mean, it's maybe it's just Sparky or Jerry Lopez, that spirit that those guys have with surf that we had. I think there was only, well, no, we had surf every event, and
Yeah.
for that place it'd be like flat, whatever, and then a couple days before, and suddenly, as luck would have it, there'd be some swell that would hit during that event, and it would be pumping, and it would be, and that's what
It's
made
the
that
mana,
event
man.
so
It's the
good.
mana
Yeah,
would bring the waves, right?
yeah,
So many people showing up, and the
exactly.
ocean would just respond. You know that.
Yeah, and it
That's how
made
that
it
worked.
made it such a cool event to basically you had to power out through the surf. You had to, somehow make it around these buoys without getting slammed by somebody, and there'd be like, you're looking at the bottlenecks were gnarly. I mean, they're like probably 10 people wide with, 100 all going at once going in, and people just yelling, cussing, stuff falling, people slamming each other's boards, this and that, and suddenly you'd come out of it and you're all, okay, I got to straight away go across, and suddenly you'd be all, oh, here comes a set, and you take off, and if you got lucky, you got that set to the next buoy, and that was the downwind buoy that was by the hammer, and or if you were out ahead and you didn't get a set and you were just like grinding as hard as possible and you just turn around and you'd see a set grab all the people that were way behind you, and
Yep.
suddenly before you got to the buoy, you were all on the same
There's
wave.
a dozen of you
It
now
was
all side by side.
so
Yeah, I
gnarly.
know.
Yeah.
And that's what made it fun. I think for
Yeah.
people on the beach, it was all happening right in front of you,
Totally.
right? There wasn't like a long distance race where people disappeared for 30 minutes and then
Yeah.
showed back up again. So it all happened right in front of you. It was for me personally, because I came from, as a kid, I was big in one design sailboat racing. So that triangular course setup just shrunk down. So I got it, but it was cool because it was like triangular racing without the rules,
Exactly.
which was kind of funny. There was no like, hey, I'm first to the buoy. You got to let me turn.
Yeah.
People are swinging up, knocking people off their boards. Nothing intentional. Nothing, everybody was actually a very good sport about it. But man, it was just so much fun. And in later years, I don't know if you remember this, Chuck. Kai Lenny, who we'll talk about here in a second. I know you mentored Kai and some of the younger guys. And for those of you who don't recognize the name Kai Lenny, I'm hoping to get Kai on to do one of these. I might even get Chuck and Kai to come on together. That would be kind of cool. But Kai has now gone on. He was one of those little flyweights that showed up and just started killing all of us. And there's others in that pack that came up in that generation. But Kai is now, GoPro, Red Bull. He's like
He's
become
one
like
of
a
the
rock
top
star.
water athletes in the world.
Yeah,
hands down.
exactly.
I mean, he
From
is worked hard.
multimedia, performance, competition, does it all. But again, we'll talk about that another time. But Kai, me personally, one of my biggest memories of Kai, besides the fact that this little kid showed up and just started killing everybody, was that one of the last Battle of the Paddles at Dana Point, the surf was really big. There's that turn at Thor's Hammer. And I'd gotten, this is when they, instead of us all being in one giant heat, They'd broken it up into heats, and
Oh
I
yeah,
had
I
made it
remember
through
that.
to the final pro heat. But Kai had made it through, obviously. And I remember him being out in front. He caught a wave and got a jump on everybody because one of the other top racers, Connor Baxter, was right on his tail. And Kai caught a wave. But instead of coming down and pushing out the back like all of us used to do and just rounding the buoy, he on a 12-6 board dropped the rail, did a full backhand cutback like he's on a 6-foot shortboard.
Yeah.
Just like that, popped up and around the buoy, and the crowd went crazy. All of us were watching him on the wave going, and you know that when you're in an event and you hear that, oh, and everybody went, oh my God, like he did not just do what we think he just did. It just every year, that sport just got better and better and more fun. And it got to the point, probably same as for you, I didn't care about winning or losing. I just wanted to be there. I just wanted to be involved. Right? I mean, is that?
No, I totally agree. I mean, it was neat. I mean, I think, it was great to see all the young kids killing it, and it was awesome to be a part of it. But I definitely think as it kind of mixed through different sponsors and whatnot, the sport slowly, it just lost its flair a little bit, and maybe because things were changing on the money side and whatnot. And you could always bet. I mean, you had Kai, Connor Baxter, Annabelle, Candace.
Slater was in the mix
there. Slater, way early.
For a long time.
But I mean, it was just kind of, you could just count on those youngsters putting the hammer down, always doing it, and it was cool. But I think as the sport kind of progressed and stuff, and there was other events, and it just slowly kind of going, all right, we need something new. Like we almost really wanted to put an effort in to try a whole different sport, but at that time, money started changing a little bit, and the sport was already out for so long, and it was kind of like, all right, I'm going back to surfing and what.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, you and I kind of had, obviously different paths, but similar, right? So, so you started. Let me back up a little bit in Chuck Patterson's life. Chuck, you started. Now, I know you've always been an outdoor guy, but when you start hearing things like you started at 2.5 years old, what did that mean for you? What kind of stuff were you doing at 2.5?
So for me, I was super blessed. My mom was a big time European ski racer, and from Austria, like Germany. And then my dad was a nuclear physicist. So I had the best of both worlds. My dad was a strict disciplinarian, very smart, methodical on his thought, process, yet very strict. And then my mom was a badass athlete. She was she was a pro windsurfer, pro big wave, or big boat sailor as well. And skiing was kind of her big thing. So when I was born in the U.S. and then we moved back to Germany when I was growing up.
Okay.
And that's where I learned or that's when my mom was like, okay, kids gotta all ski. So around 2.5, my mom pretty much had me in the backpack and then put me down between her legs and then had me ripping around. And then my sister was born and she was in the backpack and I'm skiing. And so, skiing was pretty much our first big sport that was kind of mandatory in our family. Like, this is what we're gonna do every day, in and out. And I was super stoked because it set up kind of a foundation for me on everything I've done to this date. I mean, I didn't understand how much that would impact, my love for just that rush of doing sports, learning new things, getting challenged, getting my butt kicked by Mother Nature, and kind of shaped who I am. And really cool thing. So I started, long story short, started out skiing, and then I followed in my mom's footsteps. And as she was competing windsurfing, I ended up joining her, and then slowly learned how to compete, and then started holding my own as a junior. And then it just kind of escalated from there. And then I started figuring out how to get sponsors, and it was awesome way to start, especially as a kid.
So how did you end up then in Southern California and adding the non-frozen water to your repertoire?
Well, wintertime, so we grew up in Northern California, and we had a place in Lake Tahoe, so that was kind of our main home thing, and we skied all over there. And then my dad worked, at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory out of Berkeley, California, and also was really big in the UC system, for UC Berkeley. So that was kind of our place, and so we spent a lot of time windsurfing and skiing, and that was kind of just chasing the seasons. And then summertime was all about wind, beach, this and that. And then my mom started doing competitions in Hawaii. And naturally, we went to Hawaii, and then that's when I think I was like 12 or 13 was what the first time I got to like understand and really see big wave surfing. And of course, I went boogie boarding. I didn't even surf, but I went boogie boarding when we were there. I remember we were on Maui, and my mom was doing some event there, and I was so amped at being in the water, I couldn't get out of the water, and loved waves. And so when we flew back, I got, put all my money together and bought my first surfboard, and then started just going to the beach as much as I could, and then pleading my parents, please, let's go to the beach or whatever. And then that kind of just kicked in that kind of thing. And the crazy thing about it was that we were living in Piedmont, Oakland, which is, it's the Bay Area. So we were living kind of on the inland side of the bay, and in order to get to the beach, it was a good hour to cross the bay to get into San Francisco and then get to the beach. So it wasn't like your normal, like, oh, we lived on the beach. It's like, no, I lived really far away.
Like 20 minutes. It was a trip.
It was a trip.
Plan for it.
Yeah. So my parents, I was very lucky. I was big time into skateboarding. I learned a lot. As long as you had 20 cents in your pocket to call your parents, and they knew who you were, and I wasn't, being an idiot, I could go anywhere I wanted on the bus. So, sure enough, I kind of mastered a plan, and I'd wake up at like 4 a.m. and I'd skate down to the bus stop and have my surfboard under my arm and my wetsuit in my backpack, and there'd be no one on the bus, so no one could tell me I couldn't use my board. And so the guy was really cool, and he goes, all right, yeah, right on, just sit in the back. And I'd drive all the way down to Oakland, and which wasn't the most safest place, but that's where we had the subway
Not
system.
Exactly Dana Point, but okay, yeah, agreed.
So we had the subway it was basically called BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit. So that was kind of like a little subway that went underneath the bay waters and ended up back in San Francisco. So I would get on that thing before the work rush, and I'd make it to San Francisco, and then I'd get on this railway kind of like bus train that would get me all the way to the beach. And so that whole thing was like a good 2-hour one-way trip doing it that way. And I made some friends at the beach. I just put my head down, was super determined. I wanted to learn how to surf, and I met friends there that lived there. Long story short, I ended up leaving my boards there, made some really good time family friends, and ended up spending every weekend there. And, that's kind of what started it all. And I got a really good lay of the land, surfed incredible waves. And then that kind of was like the beginning of it just kept escalating from there. And then, getting into skiing and snowboarding as I grew up, I started competing heavily into that, and that was kind of like a no-brainer. And surfing, really complemented that on the water side. And so I just kind of just kept going back and forth between those sports. And
so for you, obviously, and I've talked about this on a lot of the podcasts, and obviously you're good friends with Dave Kalama. I've known Dave for years, and it's funny, I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like, God, it's like Dave Kalama and him were living like parallel lives, right? Like when because I got into all this with Dave too. Like, dude, how did you end up Mammoth, California, Hawaii? Like, what happened? And it's like identical. Like, he's like, yeah, I was going to be a big, downhill racer. And then I went, oddly enough, Maui, right? There's something about Maui, man, because you're now like the third or fourth person I've talked to that, sure, we all talk about Hawaii, but people don't realize it's an island chain, right? it's I find it funny that people, you automatically assume, oh, well, they must have gone to like, North Shore and
Yeah.
that's they get it. No, Maui like spoke to you guys, right? Like this
Yeah.
is, oh my God, I love that. Dave said he literally heard I'm going to ask you this. Did you ever have that moment where you realized doing this stuff, adventure sports, whether it's surfing, skiing, whatever, this is what I want to do, like figure out how to make a living doing this. I don't want to be like my dad or what the
But
schools are telling me I need to
yeah.
go and do. Did that ever
Well,
happen?
yeah, you know what? My dad was all about school.
Of
My
course.
mom was also all about school, but she was also she had a great balance. Like sports was really huge. So she would take me out of school and take me to windsurfing races. And then I started getting good enough to where I competed as well. So I was like, okay, I want to do that. I'm not going to not do that. So I didn't go and play, sports in school until later in high school. But, so I would leave, my mom would take me out of school and I'd go and do the windsurf thing. And I'd
So
be,
did you play team sports
oh yeah, I
in
did. I
school
did
and high
later in
school?
high school, yeah. But it
Okay.
wasn't my driving force. I mean, I was amped
Right.
to do stuff with my mom, and I was so into the water thing. And then windsurfing was just growing and pretty badass, and I was super into it. And then when it came to, following her around, doing the ski stuff, to me that was just like normal. That was just like for us, that was doing that sports stuff. It wasn't like baseball, soccer, anything like that. But for me, that was like our everyday thing. So I was like, okay, that's
Yeah.
normal. But when I played that off with my friends at school, they'd be like, dude, aren't let's go skateboard, this weekend. I'm like, oh no, I'm going up to Tahoe to go ski, or oh no, I'm going to Hawaii to go
Yeah.
windsurf with my
Yeah.
mom or whatever. And so it was a little different thing. And then I remember in after high school, about ready, did college and stuff, and then I had like second year I was gonna go, and then I remember I got this like my dream job. Basically, I got a contract from a windsurf company to travel around the world and be with them and have everything paid for. And I looked at like, okay, I'm going to go to school for physics, or am I going to go travel the world and do what I've been trying to do my entire life?
Right.
And
Right.
so it was the hardest conversation to have with my dad. But once I, so to speak, nutted up and said, all right, once I said, hey, Dad, it's hard for me to have this conversation with you, but, I have something that's, come across my plate that's, I've always dreamed about and I really feel strong about, and I want your blessing. And he already knew about it, and he told me, why did it take you so long? And I said, because I was honestly petrified to ask
Yeah.
your permission or even tell you, because I had so much
Yeah.
respect for, how he basically,
And
taught me.
I mean, look, you probably have gone through the same thing I've gone. I mean, same thing. I had a very competitive family. Um, I played competitive team sports, but different because I grew up in New York. So the competitive team sports were fine during the school year, but the minute it got warm, my whole family, my dad in particular, was one design sailboat racer. That was like his
Oh
hobby,
yeah.
and we raced professionally in that. So same thing. Like it would come summertime, and everybody would be like, "Hey, let's go skateboarding. Let's go." No, dude, I'm going over. I got to go race. I got to go out of town. I'm going on. We're going to hit like 3 regattas over the next 2
Yeah.
weeks. And people, because I was way inland. Same thing. I didn't live on the water. I was way inland, and people would be like, "What do you mean you're going to Connecticut to go to a regatta? What's a regatta? Like, what the hell are you talking about?" And nobody, basically, Chip just disappeared every summer, right? And I had a whole different group of friends
Yeah.
and people that I knew from the racing circuit and the whole thing. I did one design laser, the laser sailboats, fireballs, 420s. And then during the week, then I would race on ocean racers, around Bermuda race. I'd crew on those. And then my dad had his own one design, boats, Etchells 22s and J24s and stuff like that we were racing on. So that's how I spent my whole youth coming up, all the way until I got to college. And even after college for a little while, I did it, with my family.
Yeah.
But same type of thing. What I found interesting was that, as I look back on that now, I had that same influence though, where that programming of, I went to a very high academic school where everybody was a 4.0. They even got rid of class rank my senior year because the parents protested, because you could have a 4.0 and still be, 125th in your class. And so they wanted to make sure the colleges, everybody was trying to get into Ivy League and all this stuff. So there's this huge amount of programming from the parents and the school system. Go to school, not just go to school, but go to a really like competitive, top-notch school, do 4 years, get into traditional work environment, corporate world, whatever it is, or be a doctor or attorney or what have you. And it sounds like obviously your dad was very much in that world, right? Like that's how he had been raised. And where I'm kind of jealous, I told Dave Kalama the same thing. I'm like, I probably wanted to do what you guys did, but I just went, no, I'm going to follow the program. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to try and get in the corporate world. And that's what I did. I'm jealous of you guys that you either had an epiphany or just had that ability at a very young age to go, you know what? I don't think that aligns with who I am and where I need to go. And that's, dude, that's pretty cool.
I think, like you said, everybody grows up a little bit different, and it really depends on, I think, like what resources are kind of in front of us. That I'd like to think that, at our age, especially out of high school, college, right there's that thought of like, okay, after all this ends, we're pretty much, we're taking on a big responsibility. So there was that gamble of like my dad. I remember when I told him, he said, if that's what you want to do, you better do it 150%, because if you come back, you have just wasted my time and especially yours. And I just remember that in my head, that just resonated so hard that I was like not going to blow it, because I did not want to come back and, eat my own words. And I remember a lot of my dad's scientist cohorts and whatnot at work were always like, hey, what are you going to do? Are you going to, you're going to go to Berkeley, do your thing? And I kind of stuck it out, and I said, no, I'm going to be an athlete. Yeah. And they're like, you can't make any money doing that. Don't waste your time. Go to school.
That's not a job.
Yeah. So it was kind of one of those things. And then when I had that opportunity to basically travel around the world and do that, it was a gamble, but at the same time, it made me 150% happy. And I was like, I don't care what it takes, but I'm going to do it. And I ended up doing it with this one sponsor for, I think it was like 6 years. And the cool thing was, It wasn't just windsurf. Like it just opened my mind. With travel, you end up learning so much. Street smarts, whatnot, meeting people, you're dealing with corporate sponsorships. I spent a lot of time in Europe. I was in Australia, Hawaii. And I mean, it was just like the best thing for a kid that was, like 20 to 22. I was just like living the dream. So it was really cool. And I kind of took that gamble and I just never looked back. And then I was kind of one of those where I got bored easy. So I would set a goal with a sport and I just keep hammering it out. And then once I kind of got to that goal to where it didn't really interest me, or I maxed out my interest or my learning, then I was like, okay, what's next? And before that really ever happened to me, and it happened so many times, suddenly a new sport would come out, or like windsurfing, like from windsurfing and skiing and that, then I had snowboarding, then I kind of parlayed between the two. And then with windsurfing, it opened my eyes to surfing, and suddenly had this little bag of tricks, and I just kept going. And then I was so like drawn to the ocean and just sports in general, like getting that rush of just doing stuff in Mother Nature, like in that playground where it wasn't like going to school and just reading books. It was like I was learning from, my actions out in the water or on the mountains. And so every time I was about, maxed out on like, all right, suddenly a new sport would happen. And then we had kiteboarding, wakeboarding started going off.
Did you feel like there was some kind of synchronicity going on? Like,
totally.
Like almost like, you chose this path and then you knew this about yourself, though you probably didn't think about it all the time. And then, like you said, right around the time when you start to get a little tapped out, the universe would go, "Hey, Chuck, here's something new. Why don't you try this?" Right? And
Definitely.
so, I guess my question, because Dave and I talked about this, flashing forward to now, do you feel like, I know you're, I think we're all similar in the fact that we're driven, but do you feel like it's been work to get to where you're at now, or to accomplish all the things you have accomplished? Does it feel like it was a lot of work?
Mm, Funny enough, no. I mean, maybe while you're doing it all, you're grinding it out. But when I really look back at it, I think it really comes down to I loved it so much, and I still love it,
Yeah.
that it didn't feel like work at all. I ended up, I think, a lot of times having to kind of check myself and go, bro, you're so lucky to be able to do this. And so I really
Right.
worked hard at like, getting together sponsors that would complement what I wanted to do. So that was water and snow. And so sometimes I would get a bigger contract, like with kiteboarding, where I'd make really sick money, for a couple of years. And so I would kind of put some of that money away. So then wintertime, I could go and grind it out and still travel skiing and film and do that.
Right.
And then, or it'd be the other way around where I got a sick contract with a, winter brand. And then suddenly I was like, well, if I do it right, I can, use that money and then rent a house in Maui for 3 months before the snow falls. And so I started getting really crafty. And then I started
Yeah.
figuring out like they really work well together. And then I was kind of ahead of my time as far as people were like, why don't you concentrate on one sport? And just kill it at that. And I just said, it's not my DNA to just be good at one thing. I'll be burned out so quick. And I have more
Right.
fun because I think all the sports really kind of like yin and yang, like they work well.
Yeah.
They really, complement each other. And it helped me get better at another sport. Like I take a break from skiing and snowboarding. I powered out surfing, get into kiting, windsurfing, this and that, and suddenly I'd go back that next season with a whole new outlook, totally fit, ready to go, and hungry, and I'd kill it skiing. And I'd just do that every
Right.
season with a different
Right.
sport.
And by the way, for those listening and watching, when Chuck says killing it at skiing, he's not talking about just going to the Black Diamond slope and, getting off the lift and, saying hi to some of the ladies and then cruising down the slope. Go check out photographs of what Chuck Patterson considers killing it. We're talking stuff that look, today they just do CG. Like in a movie, they just go, that's way too expensive to put a human body into that position, not to mention the fact we have no idea whether it's going to pull it off. I mean, dude, I saw some shots of you going across roads and stuff on skis. Look, I don't know what, from a perspective, I could probably do some math, but 60, 80 feet in the air, no idea where you're landing on the other side. This is not a groomed slope someplace. You're just, whatever's out there, you skied it. Whatever's at the bottom's at the bottom. People don't understand it. And again, that's not just Chuck skiing. That's Chuck in the water, on frozen water, on liquid water. Everything's giant, huge, super risky. You'll see, because I'm gonna quote some people that Chuck has that endorse him and that he's known over the years. It's a common thread, man. You consistently, everybody's like, yeah, I met Chuck. Boy, I'm surprised he's still alive. But that's like kind of the way you run your life. So, and one of the things too, by the way, and I want to make sure we don't get too lost in too many places, but one of the things that I love about you, because it definitely speaks to my heart. When I was here on the East Coast, like getting into stand-up paddleboarding, and people have heard this on some other episodes that I've done. I was always constantly looking for something new, right? Now, maybe not to the extent that you've had available to you, but that has always been kind of my MO. And had been surfing, moved to Florida. I was surfing. I'm in front of actually a really nice surf break. I'm in the same area that Kelly Slater's from. Lopez Brothers, Hobsgood Twins. These are guys I see in the lineups here on a regular basis. So I was already doing surfing and doing all that. And I literally opened up an Outside magazine, which you've been in Outside magazine. You've been in that magazine on a regular basis, just from your who you are in the sport and et cetera. But I remember opening up an Outside magazine. There was this little article about Laird Hamilton raising money for, and this is probably like around 2005, 6, somewhere in that range, raising money for autism by biking from Paris to the Normandy coast, and then jumping on this big yellow banana and paddling across the English Channel to the other side. And I was like, what the hell is that thing? And so I start doing some Google searches. And back then, anybody that knew anything about a stand-up paddleboard, which was little to none, their website looked like a MySpace page. I mean, it was ridiculous. I've told the story. That's how I met Todd Bradley and Brian Keolana with C4. I ended up kind of tracking down who's making this big giant surfboard that I just saw a little picture in Outside magazine of Laird paddling. And I went down to my Surf Tech dealer, and who's a big one here in the area. Mike Mann's the owner. And I go, Mike, what is this thing? He goes, what the hell is that? It's like the size of a car. And so I go, I don't know, but apparently Surf Tech's gonna be making it. He goes, Randy hasn't said anything about that. Hold on. So I'm in his office. He calls Randy French, who owns Surf Tech, and he goes, Randy, what the hell is this thing? And he goes, oh yeah, it's a new thing. Yeah, we're doing something with Laird. You guys want to order some? Because they're not really ready yet. And this is like 2005, 2006.
Yeah.
And I think it was like 2005. And so Mike's like, yeah, I got a guy here that wants one. He goes, what can you do with my thing? Long story short, they ordered 3 of them, right? Sight unseen.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to come in like 3 months. It was like a year and a half later. They call me up. They had my deposit for a year and a half. They call me up. They go, Mike Mann goes, dude, I don't know what the hell these things are. I had no idea what I was ordering. There's no room in my showroom. Come get this stupid thing. Oh, and by the way, it no longer comes with a paddle. And I go, what? So I go down, I pick up this board. I didn't even know how to carry it. There's no handle.
Yeah.
They hadn't put a handle in it or anything. So I'm trying to get it out of the shop. I got 3 guys helping me get it out. We're trying to figure out how to tie it on top of my Jeep. And they're like, all right, cool. And I'm like, what? You guys have no idea how to get a paddle. Nope. So I start searching. I find C4 Waterman. Todd Bradley literally had his cell phone on there. And he was making outrigger canoe paddles and just started making longer ones. And I remember calling Todd on the phone. He's coming back from the beach. He answers his phone. And he's like, hey, C4 Waterman. I go, yeah, I'm trying to find, yeah, man, we can get you some. So I work with the longboard house down here, and they order 3 paddles in. I got them a break on FedEx, and then I had to figure out how to cut the thing. And I don't know about you, but when I first went out to do it, 15 minutes I could stand, something like that. And my legs would start, all the little micro muscles, because you weren't using them like that when you're surfing, and would start to just give out. And I go down on my knees, and I basically just goofed around, and then finally just caught a wave. And in like all those movies that you've been in, or some of the people that we've raced with and stuff that have been in, or Jerry Lopez and stuff, like Step into Liquid and what have you, it was like, for you, I don't remember what it was like for you, but for me, it was like, oh, like there was like angel voices and a light came down, and I was like, oh my God, that was fun. I want to do that again.
Yeah.
And then I just got better and better, and then I started getting into the surf lineup and all of that. What was that like for you? Kind of just, I know you've broken, and we're going to talk about that here in a second too. I know you've broken in a lot of new things that nobody's ever seen, especially in a surf lineup. But what was it like stand-up paddleboarding?
I mean, with the stand-up thing, it was kind of cool, because when I was in Maui is when I first saw Laird and those guys, because they had a house in Maui, and it was Laird and Buzzy, and they were basically paddling with an outrigger canoe paddle, not a normal one, but on their butts. On
funny.
This board, and I was like, what? And then later on I saw I think it was like a couple weeks later that they had gotten a paddle, and it was one of the metal shaft paddles from Kealoha.
Yeah, like for boats.
Yeah,
like for
exactly.
Boats
so the paddle on that, and I was like, that's kind of cool, but then I kind of looked at it as kind of hokey, and I'm like, whatever. And so when I got back to Cali, to Dana Point, I was like, all right, there's got to be something with that. So then I talked to the Infinity family, the Bainey family.
Yeah.
And he was a big time tandem surfer. And I said, hey, can I borrow one of your tandem boards? Because that's kind of what they were. And then I got some kind of, I think it was like a sawed off kayak paddle that had one side. And I was
Yeah.
paddling with it, and I was like, man, this is not what they're using, but it's cool, but it's not really gonna make it. So I ended up calling and writing a letter to Kealoha, and I got to talk to Meg
Yep.
Chun, and her and Dave Chun, ran Kealoha, and I remember talking to her and saying, "Hey, I saw Laird and these guys do it. I'm an athlete. I really want to get into the sport. I would like to buy one." And she was so sweet. She goes, "Hey, you know what? We'll give you, a deal. Let us know what you think, and if there's anything we can improve, whatever." And I was like, "Okay,
Right.
cool." And then I went out, at Sano the first time, and I remember it was like 1 2 foot waves, and just the challenge of like punching through whitewater was such so awesome because it was such a challenge. You
Yeah.
eat shit, whatever, just to try to stay on was so much fun.
It was like we were kids again, right?
Yeah,
It's like you were learning to surf all over again.
yeah, and
You're a
then
kook,
everybody in the
which is
water's
awesome. People
looking
don't
at
realize
you.
how awesome that is.
Yeah, and then everybody's
Yeah.
in the water looking at you like, "What are you doing?" And then
The
they're
hell is
like, "Can
that
I try
thing?
that?"
Yeah.
And yeah, and then it ended up being one of those things where I was like, "Oh my God, I got to do it." And then it was just like, yeah, the more you did it, and it was cool because Laird and those guys were they had the ear to what was going on with the sport. So they had,
Yeah.
different like surf tech and all that were like, "Okay, we'll make whatever you want." And so he kind of
Right.
led the
Right.
charge on what was going to happen, and Surf Tech, came out with some boards, and then I remember Mickey Munoz had a board that was really
Yep.
narrow, and
Well, that was I think that was a tandem board
oh,
that
was
they
it? Oh, okay,
modified.
maybe so. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember talking to. I think I talked to.
Mickey.
I think I talked to Randy French at the
Oh,
time
okay,
about it.
yeah,
That was basically like a tandem board,
gotcha.
like a big board, like the biggest board they made,
Yeah,
and they kind of like. I guess for the smaller guys it'll work. Like it was just a way of quickly getting more
yeah,
stuff out. Right, they already had the whole thing CAD designed
totally.
and in production, so it was easy to just pump up production and get more stand-up boards. But I
Yeah,
think they knew at the time, like, yeah, this is a temporary thing until we can get it out there.
yeah, and it was just neat to see where it went, and then it just kind of went right from that to that, and then looking back at all the different sports, the same thing happened with skiing. The change from the small narrow skis to the
Right.
parabolic fat skis that we have now, and then the snowboarding era, and then with kiteboarding. I mean, it's just so cool. Like you said, it was kind of like synchronicity, where it just each sport fell into my lap, or my timing was so perfect where I could just jump over from one
Yeah.
to the next, and they all at the end of the day connected somehow, and created this love for water and snow, and it just kept me hungry the whole time.
So speaking of outside the box, so you got all these sports that aligned with your career and kind of took off, and you were at the forefront of a lot of these. When are we getting mass production of the big wave ski boots and skis that you've been doing? So again, people go Google Chuck Patterson skiing, actual skiing, Jaws in Maui, and or maybe it was Mavericks. Was it Mavericks you skied?
Now the first place I went to was in Northern California. It was
Northern
like
California,
yeah,
okay.
and it was like Cayucas or something like that. But yeah, it was pretty
So,
much.
and I know a lot of people were like, "What?"
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, man, you flash forward because of all this progressive stuff that's been going on. Have you been feeling like people are more kind of like, you know what, you might have something there, Chuck? Like, have people kind of warmed up to it a little bit? Because
Yeah.
obviously you're like the guy who's good at it because you were the first one to
Yeah.
say, "I'm gonna put ski boots on and
I mean, in
go out and surf a wave."
yeah, in the beginning, I mean, I think if we didn't have, if athletes or anyone didn't think outside of the box, nothing would really, evolve like
Right.
where it's at now. So, not saying that I was thinking that way, but it was learning all these different sports and coming from a ski background, and then spending so much time big wave surfing, and it just kind of those two, you're dealing with a big playing field, you're dealing with, big waves, big mountains. It kind of all was kind of the same. You're dealing with speed. And so having a friend of mine, Shane McConkey, who's a Red Bull athlete who passed a long time ago, but we all grew
Oh,
up
that's
skiing
right, yeah.
together. And he was kind of the one that changed skiing. from the small skis to he ended up taking a pair of water skis down this insane run in Alaska and just killed it. And he just was able to stay on top of the powder and go twice as fast. And so he started kind of the revolution of changing, to parabolic skis, skis that were a little bit wider that you could really kind of float. And then I remember, that I did both, and he was always like, you know what, you should take a pair of these water skis and try it in the waves because, you're doing the wave thing. We already know it works in the snow. And so
Right.
I kind of, like a year or two later, got a pair of jumper water skis, and they had no side cut. I didn't know what was up, but I was like, well,
Right.
I'm a good athlete, so I can give it a
Right.
shot. I went to Maui, had a
I'll
buddy.
figure it out. I'll figure it out when I'm in the 40-foot wave.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah, I
what's
was
gonna
kind of like, what can happen?
I love all you guys. Dave Klama told me that about like Jerry Lopez, with nobody had ever surfed Jaws in Maui.
Yeah.
And Jerry was like one of the first crew who was like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's go do it. We don't know what we're doing, but we're gonna go. Let's take an inflatable and sure, let's go see what we can do. I don't really quite understand the whole let's figure it out in the extremist point of what you're trying to accomplish. Was there not hey, let's take it to a smaller break, test it out a little bit?
I think there's
behind that.
I think there's that confidence level that you have. You've been you've been testing your skills.
Just skip all the beginner parts and just get to the most extreme first and figure it out then.
Yeah, I always learned, I had people always, it's either you read the instructions when you're building a model plane or you throw the instructions away and you go, I'm visual, I will make it happen. And the same went to when it came to learning anything. I learned so much better when I made the mistakes myself versus someone warning me. Yeah. And I think when it came into doing that kind of stuff and jumping, both feet in full bore, I think I actually was more on top of my game when it was like that. Because I knew the big wave scene. I knew how the ocean worked. I knew how skiing worked. And to put the two together, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm a good swimmer. I know, as long as my driver is on it, I will take care of the rest. And so there was a little risk involved of what if, but that was so behind me because I was so confident that it was going to work. I had visualized it. I'm like, it's not going to matter. And the looks I got from that first day when I went out, I was
just going to say that. It's like showing up at the stand-up paddleboard for the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
At a surf line up.
Yeah.
And then you show up at a big wave spot with skis and poles and people are like, what? Huh?
Yeah, I remember the first day I was with a bunch of friends. We were towing this area in Northern California, and it was just me and a couple, tow teams. And so I had the skis and all water skis and all that in my boots, and I had them in a bag. And so when we were loading up the jet skis, with our surfboards and all that, I had put everything in a bag and I threw it in the top, put the boots in the front hatch, and then I put the skis in this big kind of bag, so it was all zipped up, and I put that in the gunnel, and they're like, what is that? And I'm like, don't worry about it. And so my tow partner, who I was...
Don't pay attention to that.
Yeah, well, I was driving with, he knew what was going on, but he just kept his mouth shut and whatever. And so I said, all right, so we get out. Long story short, we're surfing this killer, big reef break, and, it's like 40-foot waves, but just perfect. Nothing too gnarly, but just really clean, peeling left and right. And we're having a great time, and it's glassy. And then we're kind of getting close to the end of the session, and I'm like, you know what? I have it here. I got to give it a shot. So we drove kind of a little further away from the break, and so those guys would do their own thing, and they wouldn't look at us. And so I'm sitting there. I'm trying to jam my foot into the ski boot. I didn't really figure out having wet feet. Dry ski boot didn't work. And so all these things I'm just going through it. So it took me like 45 minutes to get my boots on. Finally figured that out. Put my feet in the ski bindings and clicked in, had my vest, and I'm like, okay. Then I had, I grabbed my ski poles, because I had the straps, because to me, that's how I grew up skiing, and that's what makes sense. And so I didn't think that was weird at all,
You're skiing, might as well have the poles.
Yeah,
you gotta hold, even though you have to hold the tow line, and the poles aren't going to do anything on the water. Sure, why not? I will tell you this, man. It gave a great aesthetic when I saw the photos. I was like, Well, I know what he's doing. We all clearly know what he's doing. He's
Yeah.
skiing on a wave. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so
funny, man.
it was pretty classic. So then I went and grabbed the rope, and my buddy went to tow me, and instantly, when I came in close to the lineup, the two tow teams came up and they're towing their buddies out, and they're looking at me like, "What the hell?"
The hell is this?
They're like, "Oh my God, I gotta see this." They're like, "Let's watch this guy eat it," And so sure enough. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna blow out on battery here. Shoot.
Can you plug in? Are you able to plug in?
Yeah, I'm gonna need like 1 second to run to my office.
Yeah,
Is that
no, go
cool?
ahead, man.
Sorry,
It's all good.
Give me 1 second.
We'll roll with it.
All right.
It's all good. For everybody listening, we've got a technical pause going on as Chuck goes to get a power plug to plug in.
All right.
Hey Chuck, just so you know, this is a full-on synchronization. Dave Kalama had the exact same thing happen. Exact same thing. All of a sudden he's
saved.
like, "Oh no, I gotta wait a minute, hold on." And the problem was he was on an iPhone.
Oh yeah,
Which is why now I'm always like, don't, please just use a laptop.
Yeah.
Dave did an iPhone. Well, he had no way of unplugging his headset and plugging his phone in. So he had to turn the whole thing sideways. It's just falling over, and he's trying to get it set up. Then he's got to unplug. So now the audio all changes.
Yeah.
But it's all good, man. We're all
just kind of roll with it.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. So, but yeah, getting back to the story. So I'm towing out. And meanwhile, the tow teams are looking at me like, "Oh, this is going to be complete chaos. Let's watch this." So I take off. We get to a big set comes, and I'm yelling at my partner to do a big turn so I can kind of whip into it. And he gets me, and he's riding down the face. And then I get all the speed, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm good." So I let go. I end up riding down, and I'm like, "Whoa, this thing works actually pretty good." So the wave starts to rear up pretty hard. I'm flying down kind of in the flats. Do a turn, come back, and then it hits the inside section. And I didn't really realize, how much faster or slower the skis are, but I did know that you had to be in the pocket all the time. Anytime I got out on the shoulder and my speed would slow down. And so I kind of was feathering it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the whole thing blew up behind me. Exploded. I lean back. I'm like, I'm not going down. I'm not prepared because I don't know what's going to happen. So I lean back in it, and I got my ski poles, and I'm just trying to balance. And I disappear, and then suddenly I come flying out, and I make it to the channel, and I'm just like, "Oh my God." And all my buddies are like, awesome. "Are you serious? We thought you were dead, And so I grab the rope, and I'm like, "Dude, I need another 15 more, And
Right.
And then every run, it just got better and better. And then suddenly I was going, this is way more fun than tow surfing. Just because it brought me back to skiing, and suddenly I'm doing it on a big canvas. And then from there, I remember that day, some guy from the cliffs or whatever shot a shot of it, and it ended up being on the back page of Surfer Magazine. And then that was kind of full chaos, where it was just like, okay, this guy obviously is an idiot.
Didn't a ski company do an ad with you?
Yeah, so I had Bogner.
You fully geared up, like as if you're on a snow mountain?
Yeah, so as it more escalated, and I put more time into it, I was living part-time in Maui, I ended up getting Bogner, which was a very famous and ritzy ski company that makes incredible ski clothing.
Over in Europe, right?
In Germany.
Yeah.
And they were all about doing really cool things that are out of the box and different, and like taking a surfboard. That's like you got like that's like under Chuck Patterson. I do crazy stuff. Like that's like you walk around with that. You should just have that on a T-shirt, just on the back, just says I do crazy stuff. That's it. Yeah, so they were really cool, and they were like going, all right, we like what you're doing, and we want to do this, for our ad campaign for a couple of years. Would you be into it? Would you be into wearing? It was just before the Olympics, and would you be into wearing one of our speed suits that our German team is going to wear? And And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, and then they're all, well, we're going to pay you this. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll do it. No problem. I'll wear a
totally do
Speedo
that.
if
What
you
else
want.
you got me to
Yeah.
wear? Yeah. You have anything else? Can we do just on a per diem, like everything that I wear, I just get the same amount of money for each thing? That'd be really cool.
Yeah, so
That's awesome.
It was really funny. So I get this box in Maui at home, and I'm like, oh, cool. Wonder what it is. And sure enough, and it's a bright white with zebra stripes, like speed suit, and then a helmet, leather gloves, and then white ski goggles. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Everything.
I don't know if I can do that, And so I had to kind of improvise, and the guys were very like, hey, we need you to wear everything. And I was like, all right, to make this work. So I kind of was like, all right. So I ended up taking the goggles, the lenses out, because I'm all, that's not going to work. And put the helmet on, and I was like, boy, this really feels pretty ridiculous, but I'm going to go for it. So I had a really good producer guy, Mike Waltz, he's one of the tow team, strap crew, ex-pro windsurfer, and then he's big time producer of films and stuff. So he was like, all right, I'm going to film this, get it dialed out. So he got a helicopter and had my tow partner. We figured out a zone to do it, and I skied. It was like 10, 15-foot faces, nothing big, but just ended up skiing this little point break, off one of the reefs out off Maui with no one around, and just got some insane footage, and they came out with a really sick little video. And
I saw the ads; they're really cool.
Yeah, and it was kind of a neat thing. And then the next year, I did it even bigger, and then did more stuff at Jaws and whatever. But it was just neat to do something where my thought process of something out of the box, but really having fun, not to prove anything. More so that, I know it can be done, and it actually works, and it's super fun. And then make a little money off that was such a cool thing,
Yeah. No, I mean, look, that's one of the things, I've always been that guy here, obviously not skiing on waves, but I've always been that guy here who, I don't care what it is. If it's in the water, I'll do it. It's fun. On top of the water, in the water, under the water. I'm always willing to try out anything new. I don't really care. And that was one of the things that, when I talked to Dave Kalama about this, and I know you've spent time in Makaha too. For me personally, that's what Makaha, it's kind of their vibe, right? Like nobody judges anybody as long as you're having fun, right?
Yeah.
And as long as you're having fun, they don't care if you take a picnic table out and surf it. It's all good. And that's kind of, like I said, that's why I wanted to have you come in, do an episode. I'd love to have you do more episodes too, is because you kind of embrace that whole thing. One of the things I want to talk about, and I want to talk about a couple more things with you if you've got time. If you're still good on time, we're going to keep going. So I really love, I haven't done this with a lot of the guests we've had on for episodes, but because you're just so good, I really want to highlight this because it says a lot, right? Like, we all have envisioned in our head who we are, what we've done. We have our goals, our dreams, all that kind of stuff. But then to hear other people quote their perception of you, and I want everybody listening, I'm going to read a couple of these. Look for the common thread, because Chuck definitely has a common thread going on. Jerry Lopez, known as Mr. Pipeline. Anybody who's not familiar with who Jerry Lopez is from a waterman standpoint probably remembers him in a pretty pivotal role in the original Conan the Barbarian movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. But Jerry is definitely the epitome of a soul surfer dude and legendary in the surfing and water sports community. But Chuck knows Jerry very well. And I'm going to quote Jerry Lopez. Chuck, what a guy. Talent, skills, muscle, good looks, but also good manners, compassion, and time for everyone. They don't make many units in this model with all these features and options. So whenever he drives by, if the door opens, and it usually does, jump in quick because his foot is only on the gas pedal. He went on to say that there's no need for a brake pedal because he's never going to use it. So you can kind of get an idea. I like that, dude. I really loved that quote because I know Jerry. I've met him a few times. I love that the way he described you. Robbie Nash, and again, here's that synchronicity again, right? Dave Kalama tells me that when he had the epiphany and then moved to Maui, the first guy he meets is Robbie Nash, and then ends up, again, windsurfing was kind of his entry. He went from skiing into windsurfing, whole thing, and has been part of the whole Nash family. Robbie, for those who don't know, I mean, look, I'm a kid from New York, from Westchester County. I was a big sailor. We had started getting into windsurfing when I was in high school. Nothing compared to what you guys have done. Please, everybody understand that. I would have been the guy on the 14-foot Bic lake board trying to surf waves in Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. That was the extent of my windsurfing. But because it was so cool to me, and I aspired to it, I told Dave this. I had pictures of Robbie when I was in high school on my wall, right? Because he was the world champion, pulling airs, doing crazy stuff. So Robbie Nash says this about Chuck: as a friend and ambassador for the Nash brand, I'd rather go on a surf trip with Chuck than just about anyone because of his contagious desire to be in the water hour after hour above anything else. Dave Kalama, who you've heard us talk about, and obviously there's another episode with Dave Kalama as well. He's a previous guest. I love what Dave says, because this is definitely Dave's personality. Dave says, I'm not sure I really like Chuck. He's the only person I know that's having more fun than me. Actually, I love people that love having fun. So I guess that puts Chuck at the top of my list, because that boy loves his fun. Not many people are willing to dedicate their lives to their passion and truly accept all that come with, good and bad. Chuck is one of those rare individuals that has completely fallen in love with life and is going to get every single smile out of it that one man can. And for that, I admire him, and I'm thankful to call him my friend. Now that one almost gets me a little teared up there, Chuck.
Me too.
Dave's definitely a salt of the earth, no pun intended, because everybody, we're all into water. But Mickey Munoz, who those who don't know, also another legendary, also known as the Mongoose. Mickey Munoz says that Chuck has hung it out most of his life, and he's surprised he's still here. Which I love that, man. That's my favorite. That quote is fantastic. There's one other one. Oh, I haven't even talked about this. So before I read this next quote, the next quote that I have here is from Nick Woodman, who's the founder and CEO of GoPro. For those of you who don't know, you more than likely have seen a Chuck Patterson photo, even though he doesn't bill himself as the photographer. When it comes to GoPro, which for those of you who don't know what a GoPro is, it was the founding action sports camera. So obviously it found its way into the hands of Chuck Patterson as an action sports athlete. Tell me a little bit, before I quote Nick, tell me a little bit about that, Chuck. Like, how did that change for you, being able to now record and share with people what you'd already been experiencing your whole life? Because I know for me, that was a big thing for me when the GoPros first came out.
I mean, for me, the introduction of the GoPro was I think we kind of all didn't really know what to expect, although it was cool. You didn't have to have a photographer following you around, and it allowed the athlete to kind of show his own perspective, kind of like a point of view of the athlete. So It's almost, when you went to see the video that they got, you feel like you're sitting on their shoulder doing the same thing they are. And we kind of started learning this the more we started doing sports with it and changing, the angles and where we put it, whether it's on the surfboard tip, or on the paddle or on the helmet. It just added a whole new dimension of, catching video and photos. And for me, I was just stoked to get footage for myself, and this was kind of before social media really kicked in. So it was just kind of like
Did you have one of the original little yellow ones?
Yes,
I still have mine.
Oh, so do I. I have one. Yeah.
No fisheye lens. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what the megapixel was. It's nothing compared to what it is now.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I had, and it was a wrist strap. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
GoPro.
Yeah.
That was. Yeah. I still have mine. I've held on to it for prosperity, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's good. But I mean, that was kind of the
Yeah,
whole thing. Like we were kind of checking it out. Remember, we had the SD card in there, and then the
yeah,
batteries would go really quick, or sometimes, they get. I mean, there was just so much R&D we were going through, and then every
yeah.
year the cameras got better and better, and then social media kicked in, and then it was all about, um, showing what we were doing, and we were doing sports every day and something different. So it was such a perfect thing to have. And
Yeah.
then it just became
And
kind
that
of,
blew up that's when Instagram for you really just kind of
yeah,
like,
yeah,
right? Like just blew
exactly.
up because you've got a huge following
Yeah,
on
so it was,
Instagram. And I think GoPro is a big part of that, no?
yeah, that totally helped. And that made it really exciting because it allowed you to do different sports. And then for me, I really enjoyed like just presenting a different angle that no one else had. So I was always
Right.
fighting for building something different or going, maybe I can, he only puts it on the nose, maybe I can put it on the side of the rail so I get a little more of this. And so it really made it fun in a way, but it was work. I mean, there was times when we were at Jaws and we had the camera on the tip of our stand-up paddleboard or surfboard, and you'd be waiting for sets, and it's like 40, 50-foot surf, and then you're like, to save the battery, you're like, okay, I'm going to turn it off, and I'll turn it on
Yeah,
just before
I
I
do the
go.
same thing.
And it was
Off
such
on,
a
off on, off
stress.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was such a
Yeah.
stress to go do that and then suddenly paddle and then try to be in the
And then
spot you needed to
God
be.
forbid, when you go to go turn it on, you push it too far. Now it's pointing up in the air, and you're like, God damn it! And
Totally.
then you have the best ride, and you're like, all I got was sky.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Or you basically thought you turned it on, but you really turned it
right.
off.
Yeah. I've had all those experiences, every
Yeah.
single one. And I remember people looking at me. It was bad enough that I was out with a stand-up paddleboard, but I loved putting it on the bottom of the paddle. So people would be watching me, and I'm trying to like catch a wave, and waves coming. I'm like you're doing. I'm leaving it off to save the battery, so I'm
Yeah.
turning it on, make sure I got it on the right setting. Do I have it on 3 shots
Yeah.
every whatever so many seconds, or am I on video, whatever? And then the wave's still coming, and then you're putting it down, and then it's throwing off the weight of the paddle. So then you're paddling like crazy, and then you're hoping that you tighten the screw down enough that as you go to catch the wave, it doesn't cock the camera, and then you
Exactly.
end up just catching nothing but really cool glassy water photos, and nothing of what actually happened. Yeah, I've been through all of that, man.
Yeah.
But that's really cool. So Nick Woodman, again, CEO and founder of GoPro. Chuck's got to be the world's best multi-sport extreme athlete. The guy rips waves on all sizes with the speed and energy of a Grom, skis and snowboards, TGR-worthy lines, water skis into enormous waves with a smile that you can see from shore, by the way. That's Nick's quote. And speed flies on top of it all. Chuckles, I'm getting tired of my kids asking me why I'm not as rad as you and how come my muscles aren't as big as yours. It's going to be even worse now that you're a 50-year-old real life action figure. I love you like a brother. Dude, that's fantastic. I love the comment about his kids.
Yeah.
Right? Which is fantastic. Karen Wren, who for those of you who don't know is also a world water athlete, windsurfing, paddleboarding, the whole thing. She says she'll trust Chuck with her kids. Dude, that's an endorsement right there. I didn't have to read the other ones. Karen says she'll trust you with your kids. Done.
She's got some awesome
Stig,
kids too.
yeah, Stig Severinsen, who's a 4-time freediving world champion and co-founder of Breathology. You've also worked with him. You did a spot for 60 Minutes with him, right?
Yeah.
So this is, as we get now, we've talked all about kind of Chuck Patterson, how he got to here. I want to get into a little bit more esoteric stuff, especially coming off those quotes, because they're saying a lot about you, right? One of the things I love, and I think I'm pretty confident in boiling all that down, that you seem to have a common thread. The common thread with Chuck Patterson is, first of all, fun. Everybody, no matter who I've ever talked to, or read about you or spent time with you, one, you're always smiling, always looking to have fun, right? You are basically, no matter what age you are, you're still 12 in your head, right? And you act like it. And dude, that is magnetic. The other thing that I always hear talked about you, that you have a tremendous amount of respect for those you work with, and that you're around. You have a huge amount of humility, even with all the huge success you've had. You have a tremendous amount of compassion. I'm going to talk about a couple of the charities I know that are near and dear to you. There's a tremendous amount of commitment, passion. speaking of all that, I didn't want to miss this. You volunteer and you're ambassador for Miracle for Kids and TheraSurf. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, being that I've moved now, this year's been kind of a tough one to still be able to
Sure.
uphold that, but I'm definitely going to do some this summer. But yeah, it's a great way to kind of give back, and I've had like Dave Kalama does a lot of that stuff, and we've joined forces in doing some stuff for cystic fibrosis, and just helping kids, get out there and be able to enjoy the ocean the way we do. And so there's so many great programs, Miracles for Kids. TheraSurf has been awesome because you can go and we'll, grab these kids and take them surfing. And we've done a bunch of cool stuff in Malibu. And it's just a way to kind of share what we do every day. And the minute those kids touch the salt water, their smile is as big as anything you've ever seen. And that to me it just makes you, feel deep inside like you're doing something right. And it's like I tell everybody, if you ever get a chance, just once to just participate and help, and those kids will melt your heart,
Yeah.
and it's an awesome thing. So I mean, I've been very fortunate to, be there and help along many athletes, put their time in and enjoy sharing the smiles and fun things that these kids love about surfing or being in the water, or just enjoying the beach life, being on the water. So it's been
Right
really
on.
cool.
So now, doing all the stuff you've been doing, you've traveled the world, from Indonesia to every corner. From your perspective, what do you see globally, that as a human race we really need to be paying more attention to? Obviously, we're all aware of what's going on in the oceans, going on all of that. But have you found that there's a common energy thread among, no matter whether there's a language barrier? I'm sure, I know you've had experiences where everybody around you isn't speaking English. You may not actually speak your language, but yet, you see the photos and I see the videos, and it's like that doesn't seem to matter, right? What for you? What has that experience been like? What do you find is something that maybe we're not all resonating with right now, and that you found to be that thing that just is connecting everybody that you're working with?
I mean, for me, I think, especially after this last 2 years of world changing, in my mind, nightmare. It's in
Right.
my mind, what I've noticed in a bad way is that it's really separated everyone. And beforehand, it just seemed like, whether it's politics, racism, whatever, everyone was kind of together. There wasn't a big separation of like, you know, F those guys and I'm this way, or, I'm blue, I'm red, whatever. It seems to be more separated now than it's ever been in my entire life, which is really sad. And it seems like there's people that, I mean, and I know we have it between maybe even all of our own friends, that we have that one friend that suddenly you can't even talk to because their thought process is so different. And it's just sad because in my mind, I'm very open, and everyone's got a right to their own opinion, but it's sad that normal people that we've all been friends and share the same love for the ocean or whatnot suddenly have become totally different people. And it's really
Yeah.
kind of torn a lot of communities in my mind apart. And the only thing that kind of brings me and a lot of other people together is sports and the love for ocean. And I'm very thankful for that, because that's the one place I can go and go, no matter if the world is on fire and going to shit, I can go to the ocean and feel a sense of calm and go, all right, I'm kind of at home now, And how do I, with the actions that we do, how do we get it back? How do we get
Yeah.
that community to come back to where people have that trust in each other and don't judge and suddenly going, you know what? It's about love. It's about your family, and it's not about politics, money, this and that, or stand up for what you think is right. Don't hide, and it's tough. Like you want to, I'd like to think I'm a very humble person, but at the same time, when I don't think something's right and I really disagree with it, and I look at kind of the future of it for me, I'll go out of my way and you know and say that I don't agree with it, and sometimes I found, especially now that I've had friends that disagree with me and I go, okay, I get it. But then I, look back and go, well, maybe for that reason we shouldn't be friends anyway. But it's just sad that it's gone that way. It seems like before that stuff didn't really matter as much. But now,
Yeah.
when it really matters to be unionized, where everybody's together,
Yeah.
to where we can really fight a couple of these things that shouldn't be happening, we're even more separated, and you can't do anything with that, which is tough.
Yeah, I've been finding that what I went through the same experience you've gone through, right? Where you're kind of like, wow, where'd this person come from? Like, I've known you a long time. We've had a shared interest, whatever it is, had a lot of good times together. And all of a sudden, wow, you're like, I didn't, all of a sudden you're no longer able to connect with them on the same level. And one of the things, so I've kind of gone through the same catharsis. One of the things I've started to do recently is to circle back to some of those people and have more of just an open discussion of, hey, I know we don't think or feel the same way, right? I get that. But help me understand. Help me understand why you think that way, or why you want that part of the world to be a certain way, or why you don't think another part of the world should be a certain way. Help me understand it, because I get that we may not agree, but I think if we can just find the commonalities of where we may still be the same, or whatever it is the goal is we're trying to achieve, even though we might be on different paths to get there, I think it helps to have that conversation. And I've been recommending that to everybody. I mean, I've literally gone back to people that I haven't talked to in years and said, hey man, I'm really sorry, or if it's a man or woman, I've got, I've, like you, both genders, doesn't matter. I know we've gone through this. I know we kind of had a falling out. I want to better understand. I'm not coming back to see if you now agree with me, because in some way, and I tend to do this in a lot of the podcasts, I bring things full circle. You've talked about how things in your life have always aligned, where you get to that point of where you're bored and then all of a sudden the new thing comes in. It's kind of like that for me with all this stuff, right? Like, I feel like we've come full circle, and it's time to get back together and just say, hey, you know what? It's cool you don't think that, but let's talk about, like I want to better understand it. And maybe in understanding it, and if you're willing to sit and listen to me, we'll find, maybe there's 10 things, 9 of them, maybe we don't align, but maybe there's one, right? And if that one is enough, we can rebuild on that. And I just kind of feel like if the world will start doing that, we could, I mean, at the end of the day, and this is, for those of you new to Blue Rock, or that have been listening all along, this is one big blue rock, right? There's no skin color, race, religion, country, border. We're all human beings. This is one giant planet. And though all those parameters may have served a purpose in the past, I don't think as a planet we can keep going like that. We have to start bringing it all together. So, and obviously, Chuck, that's one of the reasons why, I kind of had you on. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I wanted to make sure I covered it, only just because of all of the things you've experienced. And it is a little bit more on the esoteric side. Have you ever had a near-death experience? Obviously, you've had bad wipeouts. You've clearly put yourself in dangerous situations where they don't always work out the way you planned. Have you ever had anything like that occur to you? And again, I know it's kind of like a little bit of I'm talking about global love, and I just went, hey, near death. I know it's a little bit of a right turn, but not so much, because I want to see what you felt, or what's occurred in your life.
I could say, like, I equate it to like a cat with 9 lives. I've had some very, very close calls to where they could have gone either way.
Yeah.
And I somehow made it out. I'd say I probably had a handful, but one that sticks out was like a giant day at I was actually stand up paddling on the biggest day that everybody was surfing, and I remember it was probably solid 60 foot with a couple 70 foot sets coming through, and wasn't a big pack, but it was definitely the best of the best when it came to big wave surfers that were out there, and I was the only stand up guy. And I was, super into just still pushing that torch of, going big. And so I went out and I ended up taking off on a pretty big set, way up the point. And I took off, and as I was making the drop, the bottom turn, the wave broke, and it basically, the whitewater had caught the tail of my board, and I couldn't outrun it. And so it just basically spit the board out in front of me, and I ended up eating it going up and over the falls. And you can see in the video, like, you see my whole body and board go over. And as I went up and over with the lip, I ended up pile driving the board with my head and broke it in three pieces and kind of knocked myself out for like a split second.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a vest on, an inflation vest, but I remember grabbing for it, and I couldn't find the strings, and they're right there, but I couldn't for some reason grab, and I'm underwater and I have my eyes open and it's light blue, dark, and I just couldn't get it. And suddenly I look up and I see another wave explode, and so that means I'm under the water for two waves now, and I start to panic a little bit, and I'm still trying to figure it out. And then I'm like, all right, just chill, work your way up. And I kept swimming up, and it was taking forever, and I was going, maybe this is it, maybe this is it. So I just kept swimming, and then suddenly I heard a jet ski motor, like it was pretty loud, like, from underwater go by. And I'm like, oh, hold on, dude, you're there. And so I just kept going, and I finally make it up just in time to see actually Victor Lopez, Jerry's brother, who was doing water safety for Kai and myself, zip by, and he's yelling at me, hey, Chucky, and I basically popped up, and I turn around, and I see this next wave breaking, and it looked like 100-foot wave, and I'm like, oh my God. And so I remember before I went down, I looked at where my handles were, and then I went and dove as deep as I could go, and I just got obliterated, and then pulled. That whole thing inflated, and I pulled again, and it inflated, but I felt like it held me down. I never got up, and I was freaking out, and I'm like swimming, and finally make it up, and then take a couple more on the head, and then Victor grabs me on the inside. But that was the one time where I definitely felt like I had that choice. But it wasn't like, I've heard way worse stories. It wasn't like where I'm like, I'm definitely checked out, I don't think I'm gonna make it. I just had that where like, well, maybe this is it, but I didn't have my life flash in front of me completely. I just had a couple things, but I was like,
I call those. There was a guy I worked with on one of the podcasts. I don't know whether this is a thing. I just call it that. I call it the almost death experience.
Yeah.
Where
exactly.
you didn't go into something real, out of body thing, but it was that moment where you're like, that was close. Like that was about as close as I ever want to get, type of a thing, prematurely, at least as far as that goes.
I mean, I've had like dozens of those. Like I've been stuck in an avalanche. I almost killed all my friends in an avalanche, and I mean, they're just, but I mean, it comes with the territory. It's just like that risk is. I mean, not why we do it, but it's what keeps us going.
When you've come out the other side of that, right? So what is it done for you as a human? Meaning, like, do you come away from that thinking, seeing the world differently? Or do you just kind of go, it's all part of the course?
No, I think it definitely ensures respect that I have to give to that situation more so than I did before. So it really kind of helps me like understand, like, okay, dude, that's what we're talking about. That you learned the hard way, but now you're gonna learn from it, right? So you don't want to do that again. So it's kind of helped me manage that risk management a little bit better. And then I've found that I kind of keep myself, as we get older, we get wiser. And so I keep myself from putting myself in those situations so easy. When you're young, you're like, whatever. But as I get older, I'm all, oh, no, no, no. I've been there. I don't need to take off on the wave super deep. I can take off on the shoulder a little more.
So you're
I
way
have
more
nothing to prove.
calculated with
Totally.
your risk now than when you were younger.
Yeah. And I mean, I just look at, like, I've been very lucky where I haven't spent a ton of time in hospitals, this and that, where I've had these wreckages where I've had to come back from 3 years or whatever. I've been super fortunate. But that also comes from all these lessons that I learn, and then I just recalibrate, and then if I'm still kind of pushing that limit, I just recalibrate and go at it at a different angle, So
Cool.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, listen, Chuck, I got a whole lot more to talk to you about. I'm going to definitely have you come back if you want to.
Would love to.
One of the things we do on Blue Rock, I hope you've enjoyed yourself. One of the things we do on Blue Rock at the end is I'm going to ask you 3 different words. You can answer it with whatever first comes to mind. It could be a single word, a sentence, a thought, whatever it is. So the first word is peace.
Love.
That takes me to the second word. The second word was love. You're not gonna get out that easy, man. You're not getting out that easy. So what do you think of when I say the word love?
Community.
Nice. And the last one, that's near and dear to all of our hearts, aloha.
That kind of engulfs all of it together. So community and love. Yeah. I mean, it's to me, actually, aloha really being all the time that I spent in Hawaii, and the family and people that I've met there, Dave, everybody. That to me it just puts it all together, yin and yang,
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. Well, listen, anything new you got coming up you want to share with us before we finish up the episode? You got anything new on the horizon? I know we didn't even cover this. Chuck was obviously beach, West Coast, Hawaii guy, is now in the heartland of New England, in Vermont. Big change for you. So anything new coming with that? I mean, anything you look for?
Yeah, so for me, in a nutshell, I mean, we moved out to Vermont to try something different. I always like a challenge. And this was clearly a massive life change, and but it's been awesome. I mean, it builds you figure out who you are. And so I'm working at an aerospace company called Beta Aircraft, and a really good friend of ours has built and designed an electric plane. And so I'm working there, learning to fly all different planes and be right there at the forefront of, electric aviation. And it's something that I would have never thought of coming from an athlete side, but I'm using my brains. I'm very fortunate to have to get, to know a lot of the people there, and to have an opportunity to try something new and different. And then, so I'm taking kind of a little mini break from the sports and stuff that I did daily to learn and really kind of put my head down.
Dude, here you are again at the forefront of a new thing. It may not be water, it might be frozen or liquid water, but here you are again, dude. Synchronicity.
Exactly.
I'm telling you, man, your whole life, it's like, these are the people I love to talk to, right? Is that it's going with that flow is awesome. And now that you've shared that with me, that's totally going to be an episode. I got to talk to you about electric airplanes and what you are doing with this. This is fantastic. For everybody that's tuned in for this episode, I want to thank Chuck Patterson for taking the time out of his busy day and not risking his life today to spend some time.
You probably saved my life.
That's right. That's right. You owe me now.
Yeah.
Anyway, just want to thank Chuck Patterson for all of you out there listening, and you're gonna hear, Chuck. We're gonna have Chuck back on. For all of us here at Blue Rock, find peace, lead with love, and live. Aloha. Mahalo, brother. I love you. Take care of yourself and try and stay warm.
Aloha. Thank you again, brother.
Thanks, man.
See ya.